Hi there. So let's talk about bounce in place. First, some basic ideas and then a workflow. So I have prepared a very simple project. It's just a kick. And obviously, if I bounce it in place, audio clip is being created on a hybrid track with the audio. That's simple enough. Now imagine I would like to add an effect to that. So let's say a reverb. Yeah, that's good enough. Let's maybe add some. Okay, that works. As you can hear, the effect of this reverb extends beyond the length of the clip. So okay, let's see what happens if I bounce it in place again. Well, surprisingly, it looks exactly the same as it was before without the reverb. And the reason is that you have to understand the signal path when bouncing in place. So whenever you are using that, the signal is being captured at the output of the device that generates the sound. So in this case, I have a generator, sampler, and effect, reverb. So the signal is actually captured here, and reverb is still being processed live. That's why we don't have it in the clip. So in order to capture it, we have to put the reverb in the FX box of the instrument, and now it is a part of the device that generates the sound. It sounds still the same, but now if I bounce it, you can see the tail is here. Obviously, it's not included here because this is the second lesson. The bounce in place always ends at the end of the clip. If you are bouncing a clip, bounce in place stops at the edge of the clip. So what we can do, we can obviously make the clip longer and bounce it again. You can see the whole tail is here. Why is it important to know that the sound is being captured or being cut at the end of the clip? Because if you would want to make a 4x4 beat, let's say like that, by duplicating the clip, maybe let's use a delay for it to be more apparent. Maybe let's go back one bit quickly. So if I now bounce it, I will use a shortcut. You see that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 individual echoes of the original signal. Yeah, and now if you would just duplicate that clip 3 times to have a 1 bar 4x4 beat, when it's in MIDI, you can hear this kind of sound like it's a horse running or something like that. So if you take the clips, select the clips by dragging over the headers, and you will bounce it in place, you can see that this delay isn't being repeated here anymore. This is because every clip is basically bounced individually, and the bounce stops at the edge of the clip. So it doesn't sound the same like it does here. Okay, so what you might do instead, there are, let's say, a couple of ways, or 2 at least. One, instead of duplicating the clip, you can loop it. So as you can see, this clip isn't looped. And if you drag it here, it's being extended, but if you drag it at the bottom, it's being looped. Yeah, so you can see here is the first loop and here are subsequent loops. By the way, this is such a great feature. You can change the loop point and or loop length, so you can make something. This is great for coming up with some ideas for melodies, simply changing the loop length. So anyway, you can loop the clip, and now this is considered as one clip. So if you bounce it, you can see those secondary and even tertiary and maybe fourth taps are still being recorded. Obviously, you would have to loop it, for example, here to have a perfect loop. Okay, so that's one idea how to do it. The other idea, even if you have those individual clips like before, is instead of making selection on the header, to make the selection on the time. You can do it either by going down with the cursor here when it turns into a bracket instead of a pointer. So that works. You can also change the tool to time selection tool here. It's a key tool, so you can either tap to it changes it permanently, or you can hold it for the time being, make the selection and let it go in its back into the arrow. Okay, so now if you make this time selection, if you bounce it in place, it now again captures everything, because it doesn't look at the individual clips, it looks at the time that you have selected, and it bounces the time, not the clips. Okay, so that's our starting point. Okay, now let's maybe one more thing I could show. My favorite way of bouncing clips is doing that with the shortcut instead of going into the menu. But there's one more which is very handy. When you click on the clip and hold it, you can now add Alt modifier, and it will bounce the clip on the fly. So you can see it was bounced. I can do it the same to the clip launcher. I can do it the same to the new track. So I'm dragging it somewhere, adding an Alt key, and it is being bounced. And there is one additional great feature. If you have a sampler somewhere, you can take a MIDI clip, whatever MIDI clip, drag it to that track and to the sampler, and it is being bounced again on the fly, this time without any modifier key. Okay, so that's the basics. So it's crucial to remember the order of devices, that the sound is being captured at the output of the device that generates the sound. So in this case, delay will be still active. In this case, it will be included in the audio. So now let's open the other example. Let's activate it. Maybe let's take that track from this project to this one. Okay, so here I have a maybe we don't need that delay here anymore. Okay, so here I have a simple bass line. Let's maybe loop it 4 bars. Okay, so this is again, let's loop it right here. This is a simple bass line played with Yuhi's Repro 1. I chose it specifically because it's a quite power-consuming synth. So if I turn on the HQ mode and we will disable sleep, so it always runs even if it doesn't play anything. You see that it takes over, you know, half of my CPU, and I'm running on a battery now to make it more visible. Okay, so I have this kind of pattern. Let's now draw in some automation for the cutoff, because it has a pretty hilarious filter sound. Maybe let's do something like so. And now this is also another tip. If you switch to draw tool by clicking 3 and you hold Alt, you can draw ramps like this. They are at the resolution of your current grid. Let's do something like that. Okay, let's hear how it sounds. Okay, that's fine. And fine as well. Okay, let's make it a bit bigger. Okay, but as you can see, this project consumes a lot of CPU, 60% or something, just 2 tracks basically. So how do I keep the sound, keep the MIDI, but reduce my CPU load? First, and the most obvious way, is to simply take that clip and move it to clip launcher. So here I have in the clip launcher, I still have my MIDI, and I also have the automation. And notice that the automation is 4 bars long, so it includes everything here, but the MIDI part itself is just 1 bar long. Notice how when I start to play it, the playheads go with a separate speed. So the MIDI is looping 4 times and the automation is moving 1 time. This is because automation is free, so it's being unlinked from the MIDI clip. So it has its own loop points, loop length, and obviously the length of the sequence itself. So anyway, we have the MIDI and automation stored here. So we can go back to arrangement and we can bounce it now. Right? We can even delete the automation because now the audio is being played. So I can go to my device. I can go to my device and deactivate it. And this in practice unloads the device from the project, so it frees up the CPU and RAM as well. So notice there is no CPU usage anymore. Obviously right now I cannot play this because the instrument is disabled, but I can always activate it and it works like previously. Now I can change my MIDI, I can change my automation, or maybe let's do it. So for example, let's what can we do here? Maybe we can do some kind of yeah. So we can drag it back here. One more thing, you noticed that when I'm dragging the clip, it's just 1 bar, right? But when I will take the scene and I will drag it here, yeah, maybe that's a bad example. So let's take the clip, but if I will now loop it, it remembers that there is this whole automation sequence and it recreates it here. So I have my whole sequence here, and I can, you know, bounce it again. So I still have my MIDI, but I can disable the instrument and still have the sound in a usable form. Okay, but let's go back a couple of steps. Okay, I'm back here where I started. So that's one way of doing it, storing the MIDI and automation in the clip launcher. Obviously, you can store it somewhere else on the track, but that's kind of messy. But my favorite way of doing it is something else. I will just take that track and put it in a group. And now I can make the time selection on the group track and bounce it in place. What happens now is that group track collects all the sound coming from within it, and now I turn that into audio. So again, the sound is the same. I can now even remove the MIDI, yeah, to prove it. And right now the sound is being played from this audio clip, but inside of the group the MIDI is still triggering the synth. So what I can do is just deactivate this track, and this will deactivate all the devices on it. So now I have the sound still the same, but I have no CPU and memory usage. And if I want to go back, I just go back to my track, I activate it, the plugin is being reinstantiated. I can select the audio. To select the whole clip, you have to go to the upper half. To select the time, you go to the lower half. So I select the clip again and delete it, and now I see that there is just MIDI, and I can bounce it back. One interesting thing is that you can, for example, select a certain portion of it and bounce just that. So in this case, in this portion of the track, the sound is actually coming from repro. In this portion of the track, the sound is coming from that audio clip. To prove it to you, I will, let's say, play it from the start, but we'll disable the plugin. So you don't hear anything right now, because it was trying to play here, but the instrument wasn't available. If I enable it, it now plays the MIDI and repro, and now it plays the audio, because it overrides audio clip on the group track, overrides whatever is coming into that group track from tracks inside of it. Okay, one thing that is worth knowing, this is not really easy to use in my opinion, but luckily you can go here and toggle those two. If you select show master track content, you only see the clips here, and you don't see, let's say, the summary of whatever is inside of it. It's a preference, whatever seems more obvious to you, but in this case I can clearly see that there is some kind of audio. In this case it's difficult to tell, especially if I had some additional maybe tracks here with some audio. You would see a lot of information here. Okay. Right, so maybe one more thing about bounce in place. Let's say I want to have some reverb added to that repro sound, so let's turn it up. Yeah, okay. But let's imagine that this is some kind of very heavy plugin that consumes a lot of CPU and RAM, and I want to capture the reverb sound, but still want to have repro running live. My first idea would be to simply make a selection here and make bounce in place. And something is obviously rendering. But if we will listen to it now, we hear both the source and the effect. If we disable the effect, we actually only hear the source. So remember in the first part when I told you that bounce in place captures the signal of the device that generates the sound. So in this case, because it's basically an audio track, there is no instrument here. It captures the signal here at the input of the chain. So it captures the send from here. It captures this sound of this at minus 8.1 dB. That's why it's a bit quieter. So yeah, it's just the original signal, and reverb is still being processed live. So what can we do to capture the reverb itself? Again, we make the time selection, but instead of doing bounce in place, we do bounce. And this will send the signal, let's say, pre-fader or post-fader, so at the end of my channel, let's say post-fader, and this will render it to a new track, as you can see. And this track is just pure reverb. So I can disable that one, and I have everything without the CPU hit of the reverb. That's one. The other fun feature is that master track is also a hybrid track. So again, we can make a time selection here, bounce in place this time, because you actually are interested in what is coming to the master. Okay, and now if you solo the master, you have everything. So whatever is coming to the master is being captured here. So you can solo some things, mute some other things, and so on, and capture some part of your project. And obviously you can take that track and put it somewhere else, and you can, do the usual stuff, or some kind of stretching, reversing, and so on. Okay, I guess this is it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.